Welcome to our session on motivating smart in the new economy, the second in our weekly Wednesday webinar series. Yes, I'll have a challenge with that one. Today we're going to be discussing motivation. And by motivation, we'll find out in the next slide, but first in the next couple of minutes we'll go over a survey. And then we'll look at future strategies and planning and what it means to have a family-like community, alignment, discuss steps to do the right things right, then talk a little bit about decision-making and behavioral styles. But first, let's have you take a survey. Read the statements below, and on a rank scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, insert your score for your company for each statement. Once you've totaled the scores, divide it by 5 for an average. Take a few minutes to answer these statements and average them. Once you've assigned a score and divided it by 5 for your answer, it'll help you better understand some of the concepts and practices we will be discussing during our session. Okay, who has an average equal to or greater than 4? If you do, then I'd say you're motivating smart. I still think you might be able to pick up some tips from this presentation. Who has an average equal to or greater than 3, but equal to or less than 3.8? Well, I'd argue that you're in the caution zone and you need some improvements to your motivational programs. And finally, who has an average less than 3? Don't worry, we'll talk about how you can each make some improvements to this process. The key here is that, essentially, you've put a number to what you think your motivational systems are in your organization. I want you to write down your answers to this question. Take 30 seconds or so and write down some quick bullet points. Not full statements, just quick bullet points. Ready? Go. Okay. You've put some bullet points down on what your company does to motivate employees. And let's proceed to the next slide and look at strategies for success. I mentioned in our last call, the first presentation on leadership and managing SMART, the research performed by Cornell University with 250 small businesses, answering the question of how do people contribute to the success of our business. And they examined the 3 areas, hiring, managing, and motivating, and found that if you could achieve workforce alignment, having all the dots connected, you would have a more productive and profitable company. Does that make sense to you? When looking at employee motivating practices and workforce alignments, the researchers found 3 different strategies used to motivate people. They found that creating a family-like community is strongly and positively related to creating the best long-term workforce alignment. Does it make sense then that it is better to define where we are going and what we need to do to get us there to create a more aligned and focused workforce? Here are 5 steps to align your motivational practices to motivate people to do the right things right. They're not mutually exclusive, and they do work. The first one sets the stage for each of the others. The second one is needed, and I'll argue that on a continual basis and in a variety of ways so that employees understand the culture environment you are working in. The third step establishes a regular and recurring dialogue with your employees and enables you and them to share valuable information and insights. The fourth step helps to bind those relationships outside of the work setting. And the fifth step establishes and solidifies your culture of caring and motivating for your employees. When we work with clients on their human resource and management practices, we inquire about these steps. Why? Because we know they work. The thought here is that employees know as much about our company that you do. They just have a different perspective. That perspective is developed by their thinking style, their behavioral preferences, and by their position location within the company. We can learn a lot by operating at, soliciting, and listening to that perspective. Have any of you watched The Undercover Boss, where CEOs go undercover to learn about their operations? Well, I'll argue that this would not be needed if we regularly engaged employees at all levels of the company in this process. And the SWOT simply is a strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threat analysis that engages all in a sharing of information and thoughts. It helps to clear the air to apparent strengths when discussed from each person's perspective. Once that is completed and the participants have full opportunity to discuss and understand each person's perspective, it can significantly influence the discussion of the remaining factors to a plan. Finally, each time I've done this, I find that employees and the company will get a better sense of fit and of belonging. I often ask clients these 2 questions. What is your mission vision, and what are your goals and strategies for success? So let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what are your employees' understanding of your mission, your vision, your goals, and your strategies? Write that number down. Someplace between 1 and 10. Now that you know what that number is, the gap between that number and 10 is your room for improvement. The new employee orientation process, in this sense, becomes critical for new hires and usually begins at the hiring interview stage, where the applicant is asked a series of questions to help you align to the company's strategy and the company's plan. Does that make sense? Okay, holding company-wide meetings. When you're holding those types of meetings, look to share progress, discuss, and recognize employees in those areas below. So for instance, for customer relationships, specifically look at how your company's level of customer service or a service experience is greater than that provided by the competitors. And ask your employees their opinion. For employee commitment, experience shows that when employees are more committed to the organization, then they are likely to stay with the company and work harder in their job. What is their commitment? Have them talk about it. And with respect to job involvement, companies that have limited resources, new and small, need employees who must be willing to go above and beyond the basic tasks and responsibilities of their jobs to be successful. And the similar comments could be made for adaptability, helping behaviors, and knowledge sharing. The key here is during your meetings, ask your employees to contribute examples. It never ceases to amaze how simple and effective these social events and activities can be. I've had the opportunity to play on softball teams, attend professional ball games. Yes, I'm a Red Sox fan and proud of it. Participate in bowl-a-thons, enjoy annual picnics and holiday parties, and go out to dinner with coworkers, just to name a few. Companies can sponsor sports teams, sponsor fundraisers, adopt a nonprofit, and other events. They can be fun, engaging, and allow employees and their families to see each other in a relaxed setting. And that's invaluable in establishing credibility, trust, and respect. When you're seeking to create a strong social environment, think about what you think your employees would answer to each of these questions. What do they value? What motivates them? What talents do they bring? And how can you better enable them? Ask them. Show them you care. You see, when you're seeking to create alignment with a family-like community, you really are establishing a strong basis and a continuing basis for motivation, creativity, and initiative to change and improve the productivity of your company. In my experience, employees do want to be valued. They do want an honest, respectful, and effective communication process, and they want a healthy, productive company environment. Think about how you can make it dynamic and motivating. Let's switch gears here a little bit, and this is key to understanding your own and your employees' motivations. As companies and employees become more reliant on worker knowledge, it's important to develop a way to identify the thinking and decision-making patterns required for their different job functions. This information has helped a number of clients develop a better approach to employee selection, management, and motivation. Think about it. The majority of your time, do you make decisions with your head, your hand, or your heart? When you're working with an employee, it helps to understand how she can contribute thinking strengths to certain aspects of the company's needs, particularly as these relate to commitment, helping, adaptability, involvement, and sharing. Try not to assume what employers in the past have done by practicing that old pigeonhole syndrome, that is, slotting someone to a position and not considering their capabilities. You might as well just lock them in a hole and shut the door. Let's continue the discussion on behaviors. Being aware of each person's personality and behavioral style helps us to create a better understanding of the personality of the company, its culture, and for our discussion here, how we can use this knowledge and information to structure more effective and productive exchanges of information between and amongst employees and their customers. For instance, understanding how to communicate better. Know how each person likes to communicate and be communicated with. Here's some examples. You look great because